Have you ever wondered what makes some people esomagnetic? Kind of people who walk into a room and everyone's just instantly drawn to them. It's almost like a superpower, right?
Mm.
Well, that's the magic of charisma, and honestly, it's something I've always been fascinated by. I remember this one time I was at this conference, and I totally froze up trying to talk to this big shot CEO. My brain just kind of short circuited. I couldn't even form like a coherent sentence. It wasn't my most charismatic moment. That experience really made me realize that charisma isn't just some mystical gift. You're either born with it or you're not. It's actually a skill that can be learned and developed. The more I've dug into the research on charisma, the more I've become convinced that anyone can become more charismatic.
Wow.
Well, with a little effort, at least. So, in this deep dive, we're going to unpack the science behind charisma, explore its key components, and uncover some practical strategies for, cultivating that magnetic charm. First things first, let's debunk a common myth. Charisma isn't some magical quality that only a select few possess. It's actually a learnable skill. And there's actual scientific research to back this up. One study I came across, researchers were able to manipulate people's charisma levels in a lab setting just by having them exhibit certain behaviors. Isn't that fascinating? So, at its core, charisma is about actions and behaviors, not some, you know, innate quality. And when we talk about charisma, we often hear about the importance of presence, power, and warmth. And while all three of these elements are important, I think presence is really the foundation. It's about being fully engaged in the moment, giving your undivided attention to the person you're interacting with. But let's be real, being present is easier said than done, right? We live in a world of constant distractions. Our phones, social media, to-do lists, all vying for our attention. It's no wonder we struggle to stay focused and truly present in our interactions. I know I've definitely been guilty of this. I'll be talking to someone, but my mind is somewhere else entirely, thinking about all the things I need to do or what I'm going to say next. And I can tell that the other person can just sense my lack of presence. It's like I'm not really there with them.
Mm.
But here's the thing. Even those Zen masters who spend hours meditating, their minds still wander. So if you find it hard to stay present in conversations, don't beat yourself up about it. It's totally normal. The key is to, make a conscious effort to cultivate presence. And there's some really simple things you can do to bring yourself back to the moment. One trick I've found helpful is to just take a few seconds to focus on my breath or notice the sensations in my body. It's a quick way to recenter myself and tune back into the conversation. Another important aspect of presence is being aware of your body language. Remember that networking event I mentioned earlier? Looking back, I realized that my body language probably screamed uncomfortable and insecure. I was probably fidgeting, avoiding eye contact, and generally giving off all the wrong signals. The thing is, our brains are hardwired to pay more attention to nonverbal cues than to the actual words we hear. It's an ancient survival mechanism. Back in the day, we needed to be able to quickly assess whether that shadowy figure in the bushes was, friend or foe. And body language played a huge role in that assessment. So even if you're saying all the right things, if your body language is screaming, I'm uncomfortable, people will pick up on that and it'll undermine your charisma. There's this story in one of the articles I was reading about a guy who almost lost a $4 million deal because he was wearing a heavy wool suit on a scorching hot day. He was sweating, fidgeting, and basically radiating discomfort. And even though he had a killer presentation, the client just couldn't get past his visible distress. It just goes to show how much our body language can impact how people perceive us. So if you want to boost your charisma, it's crucial to pay attention to your nonverbal cues. Stand tall, make eye contact, and try to project an air of confidence and ease. Now I know what you're thinking. Easier said than done, right? And you're absolutely right. Sometimes the biggest obstacle to charisma isn't our outward appearance or even our body language, but it's that pesky little voice inside our heads. The inner critic. That voice can be a real charisma killer. It fills us with self-doubt, makes us question our every move, and can really mess with our confidence. And the worst part is, even if we try to hide it, that Inner critic often manifests in our body language. We might tense up, fidget, or avoid eye contact, all those things that scream, I'm not confident, to the outside world. One of the articles I read talked about this executive who felt like he spent 80% of his day battling his inner critic. Can you imagine? That's like a full-time job in itself. And it made me realize that we all have those negative thoughts sometimes. It's just part of being human. But here's the thing, we don't have to let that inner critic run the show. There are ways to neutralize that negativity and prevent it from sabotaging our charisma. The first step is to simply acknowledge those negative thoughts and destigmatize them. Remind yourself that everyone experiences self-doubt. It's totally normal. The next step is to neutralize those thoughts. Remember, your thoughts aren't always accurate. Think about a time when you were convinced that someone had a negative opinion of you, only to find out later that they actually thought you were amazing. Happens all the time, right? Our brains can play tricks on us. And finally, once you've destigmatized and neutralized those negative thoughts, you could start to rewrite your reality. This might sound a little out there, but trust me, it works. Let's say you're stuck in traffic and you're already late for an important meeting. Your inner critic is probably going wild, right? But instead of letting it get to you, try coming up with a more positive interpretation of the situation. Maybe that traffic jam is actually a blessing in disguise. Maybe it saved you from getting into a terrible accident. It might sound silly, but by reframing the situation in a more positive light, you can actually shift your mental state and prevent that negativity from affecting your charisma. Now, let's talk about first impressions. You know how they say you never get a second chance to make a first impression? Well, turns out there's a lot of truth to that saying. Research shows that people form lasting judgments about us incredibly quickly. Like in one study, strangers were able to accurately predict a teacher's effectiveness based on just a 2-second silent video clip. That's crazy, right? 2 seconds. It's like our brains are these super fast impression-making machines. So how do we make sure those first impressions are good ones? Well, first and foremost, dress the part. Figure out the tribal wear of the environment you're going into and adapt accordingly. You wouldn't wear a Hawaiian shirt to a job interview at an investment bank, right? Then there's the handshake. Aim for confident and firm, but not bone-crushing. And finally, focus on the other person during conversations. Ask questions, listen attentively, and make them feel interesting and valued. People love talking about themselves, right? So be a good listener and you'll instantly boost your charisma. We've covered a lot of ground already, but there are a few more nuggets of wisdom I want to share from these articles. First up, there are actually different styles of charisma. There's visionary charisma, focus charisma, kindness charisma, and authority charisma. And the key is to figure out which style works best for you and the situation you're in. Then there are some charismatic speaking tips. Fluctuate your voice to keep people engaged. Pause for impact, and slow down your pace. And finally, when it comes to dealing with difficult people, the key is to tailor your approach to their individual needs and use empathy to win them over. But you know, all this talk about different charisma styles and techniques can get a little overwhelming. So let's simplify things a bit. At the end of the day, charisma is really about connecting with people on a genuine level. It's about being present, being confident, and making others feel good about themselves. Now, I know this might all sound a little theoretical, so let me share a story with you to illustrate how these charisma principles can play out in real life. Remember that CEO I totally froze up talking to at that networking event? Well, a few months later, I ran into him again, but this time it was at a charity gala. He was wearing this like ridiculous penguin costume for some fundraiser. And you know what? Seeing him like that, completely out of his element, it totally disarmed me. We ended up having a really great conversation, just chatting about the event, our families, all sorts of things. And it made me realize that sometimes the best way to connect with people is to simply let go of our own self-consciousness and embrace the awkwardness. It's about being human, and letting others see our vulnerability. That experience completely changed my perspective on charisma. It's not about being perfect. It's about being real. It's about being present, being kind, and making others feel comfortable and valued. And the funny thing is, once I stopped trying so hard to be charismatic, It actually started happening naturally. But I'm curious, what are your thoughts on all this? What resonates with you the most? What's one small change you can make today to amp up your own charisma game? Maybe it's practicing being more present in conversations, paying attention to your body language, or maybe just giving yourself a little more self-compassion. Whatever it is, I encourage you to give it a try. You might be surprised at how much of a difference it makes. And hey, if you have any awesome charisma boosting tips or stories of your own, be sure to share them in the comments. I'd love to hear them. Until next time, my friends, keep shining bright and spreading that charismatic energy. Diving into all this research on charisma has made me realize that, it's not just about wowing people with your charm or being the life of the party. It's really about something much deeper. It's about connecting with others authentically, building those meaningful relationships, and making a positive impact on the world around us. One of the things that really struck me was this idea of the different styles of charisma. Like there's visionary charisma, which is all about inspiring others with this compelling vision of the future. Think of, leaders like Martin Luther King Jr. or Steve Jobs. Then there's focused charisma, which is about commanding attention and respect through intense concentration and determination. You see this in like athletes like Michael Jordan or Serena Williams. And then there's kindness charisma, which is all about radiating warmth and empathy, compassion. People like the Dalai Lama or Mother Teresa exemplify this style. And finally, there's authority charisma, which is about projecting confidence, competence, and a sense of control. Think of figures like Oprah Winfrey or Bill Gates. What's so fascinating is that you don't have to be limited to just one style of charisma. You can actually cultivate different styles depending on the situation and the people you're interacting with. It's like having a charisma toolkit, and you get to choose the right tool for the job. Speaking of tools, the research also highlights some practical tips for boosting your charisma in specific situations. For example, when it comes to public speaking, one of the most effective techniques is to, vary your vocal tone and pace. Think about it. Have you ever listened to a speaker who drones on in a monotone voice? It's like watching paint dry, right? But when a speaker uses vocal variety, it keeps the audience engaged and helps to emphasize those key points. Another tip is to, use pauses strategically. A well-placed pause can create anticipation, emphasize a point, or give the audience time to process what you're saying. And finally, don't be afraid to slow down your pace. When we're nervous, we tend to speak quickly, but that can make it hard for the audience to follow along. By slowing down, you project confidence and give your words more weight. Now, let's be real. Not all our interactions are going to be smooth sailing. Sometimes we have to deal with difficult people, and that can be, difficult. But here's the thing. Even in those challenging situations, charisma can be a powerful tool. One of the articles I read talked about the importance of empathy when dealing with difficult people. Instead of getting defensive or trying to, win an argument, try to understand where the other person is coming from. What are their needs? What are their fears? Once you understand their perspective, you can start to build a bridge of understanding and find a way to move forward together. Now, I know this might all sound a bit theoretical, so let me share another story with you that really brought these ideas to life for me. I remember this one time I was working on a project with this colleague who was, let's just say he wasn't the easiest person to work with. He was constantly critical, dismissive of my ideas, and just generally, unpleasant to be around. I was starting to get really frustrated, and it was affecting my work. Then one day, I decided to try a different approach. Instead of getting defensive, I tried to see things from his perspective. I realized that he was under a lot of pressure at work. He was probably, taking it out on me. So I started asking him about his day, showing genuine interest in his life outside of work, and just, being kind and supportive. And you know what? It completely changed our dynamic. He started to open up to me, and we actually developed a pretty good working relationship. It made me realize that sometimes the best way to deal with difficult people is to simply, be human with them. That experience really reinforced the idea that charisma isn't about putting on a show or pretending to be someone you're not. It's about connecting with others on a genuine level. being present, being empathetic, and making them feel seen and heard. And the amazing thing is, when you approach interactions with that mindset, charisma naturally flows. But I'm curious, what are your thoughts on all this? What resonated with you the most? What's one small change you can make today to boost your own charisma? Maybe it's about practicing being more present in your conversations, like really putting your phone away and giving the other person your undivided attention. Or maybe it's being more aware of your body language, standing tall, making eye contact, projecting that confidence. Or hey, maybe something as simple as smiling more. A genuine smile, it can be incredibly disarming and make you instantly more approachable. It's like a little charisma booster shot. Whatever it is, I encourage you to give it a try. Because here's the thing about charisma. It's not just about, getting ahead in your career or impressing people at parties. It's about something much bigger than that. It's about living a more fulfilling life, connecting with others on a deeper level, and making a positive impact on the world around you. And you know what? I truly believe that each and every one of us has the potential to be charismatic. It's not about being perfect or putting on this fake persona. It's about tapping into your authentic self, embracing your unique strengths, and just letting your light shine. So go out there and be your most charismatic self. And hey, if you have any awesome charisma boosting tips or stories of your own, be sure to share them in the comments. I'd love to hear them. Until next time, my friends, keep shining bright.